The following program is a production of Pioneer Public Television. Major funding for your legislators is provided by Move Minnesota, a statewide coalition fighting for a 10-year commitment to fixing our dire transportation needs. A safe, reliable transportation system strengthens Minnesota's economy. Join the conversation at movemn.org. Additional funding provided by Flaherty and Hood has provided quality legal and legislative services to clients in Greater Minnesota for more than 20 years. Our legal team focuses on municipal employment and environmental law, while our lobbyists energetically represent clients at the state capitol. Online at flaherty-hood.com. MAPE members, making Minnesota clean waters, safe communities, quality education, and veterans care happen. We work hard for Minnesotans. Live from St. Paul, Minnesota, we welcome you to the 35th session of Your Legislators, a roundtable discussion featuring state lawmakers who are prepared to answer your questions and discuss important issues affecting the citizens of Minnesota. Now, here is your moderator for tonight's program, Barry Anderson.
Good evening and welcome to this week's version of Your Legislators. We are delighted that you have joined us on this pleasant spring day, and this week I am pleased to report it really is indeed Your Legislators. Thank you to our special guests of the last 2 weeks who have filled in admirably for us while legislators have been busy with other matters, but we have a distinguished and veteran panel today to help unravel the mysteries of St. Paul. And we begin this evening, as we do each week, by introducing that distinguished panel of guests. And I begin to my immediate left from District 60B in Minneapolis, a frequent guest with us, Representative Phyllis Kahn. Representative Kahn, it's a pleasure to have you with us again. And
always pleased to be here.
Tell her, I know you've done this routine a couple of times, but tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I have my background before I was in the legislature was as a scientist, and so I actually work on a lot of science and technology issues. My district, the only place probably where that's not a bad idea to come from is around the University of Minnesota and also parts of South Minneapolis.
I want to assure everyone that the university is in good shape. I just came from speaking at Peak Hall and having dinner at Annie's Hamburger Parlor. So it's all in good shape there, Phyllis.
Okay. I know you're taking care of it.
I should mention also for our viewers who were with us a few weeks ago, Representative Carlson was here with us, and we had a little discussion about the veteran status that the two of you share.
Right. Now, he claims to have seniority because when they called the roll, they called Carlson before Kahn.
I see. This is disputed, I gather. We'll unravel that mystery later. So, all right. And also joining us, another veteran member of the legislature and somebody who's been with us many times from Clara City, District 17, Senator Lyle Coonan. You know, after 10 years or so, I get this right. So tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Well, good. Thank you. And it's good to be here. And most of my life, I was a dairy farmer. I farmed a dairy farm for 27 years on my family's dairy farm. And then in 2002 was elected to the Minnesota House, and then in 2012 to the Minnesota Senate. And I represent District 17, which includes the counties of Swift, Chippewa, Candy, Ojai, and most of Renville County. And the committee assignments I have for this session are taxes, tax reform, jobs, ag, rural development, and environment and energy.
Very good. Also joining us today from District 22, Laverne, Senator Bill Weber. Senator Weber, delighted to have you with us. Tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you very much. I'm a lifelong resident of Rock County. I represent Senate District 22 down there, which includes all or parts of 9 counties. Actually, you work your way up along the South Dakota border. I have Rock, Pipestone, Lincoln, Murray, Nobles, Cottonwood in their entirety, and then I have the southern 2 tiers of townships of Lyon County, the west half of Jackson County, and 3 townships in Redwood County. So I have 72 miles of border with South Dakota and 60 with Iowa. If it wasn't for us, you would just tip into those other states and it'd be it. But anyway, I grew up on the farm. I am in the real estate brokerage appraisal and and management business in Laverne. I have actually been in that since I came out of business college back in 1976. So, and anyway, we ran for office in 2012, so this is my third year in the legislature and my third trip on your legislator.
Well, we're delighted to have you with us. Your district is interesting because you have areas of significant growth in a couple of communities, but you've also got counties that have seen population losses. So you kind of have the whole gamut of problems and concerns that legislators get to deal with.
Very, very much so, very much so. With the city of Worthington, they've had a large minority population. In the school district right now, I talked to the superintendent earlier this week. They have 20 in the upper 20s as far as the different languages spoken in the school, and that would be with a graduating class probably somewhere between 170, 200 students. So,
plenty of issues to talk about, no
Yes.
doubt about it. All right, and finally, last but certainly not least, from District 12B, Starbuck Representative Paul Anderson. No relation to this Anderson. There are lots of us around. Tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Well, good to be here again tonight, Barry. I represent, as you mentioned, 12B, which is, I say, the area between roughly St. Cloud and Alexandria, strong agricultural area. Also, surprisingly, a lot of manufacturing around Alexandria in that area, and a good tourist industry, a lot of lakes, and good fishing up there. And I do live on a farm now, and hearing folks back home getting those corn planters going, although it's really dry out in the country of western Minnesota. We need some rain and not quite as much wind. But I'm chair of the Ag Policy Committee, also serve on Property Tax Division and Education Finance Committee in the Minnesota House.
We should mention that Representative Kahn, who is the institutional memory around this table here, was reminding us that you have a relative who served in the legislature. Tell our viewers just a brief thing or two about that.
Well, my uncle, his name was Delbert Anderson. He served back in the 1960s and 70s, and he was a neighbor out in Andersonville back around Starbuck, and a very powerful legislator down here. Worked a lot on the university at Morris to get that up and running, transportation and bonding and buildings around the state of Minnesota. So a well-known veteran was my uncle Delbert Anderson.
Well, we'll have a chance to talk about the late Representative Anderson's interest in transportation, because that's a question that many viewers have. But before we go there, let's go to the item of news that was generated today with this, which is this question of Sunday liquor sales. So I think it was the Senate that acted, if I'm right. So let's start with our veteran senator, Senator Coonan. What happened there?
Well, today on the Senate floor, we took up the liquor bill, and it didn't include any language related to Sunday liquor sales. But of course, there was an amendment offered on the floor that would allow for Sunday liquor sales. I think the amendment also included some language that wouldn't allow deliveries on Sundays, which was supposed to help alleviate some of the union's concerns. But other than that, it allowed Sunday liquor sales. And there was, an hour and a half, or hour and 15, hour 20 minutes of debate on that one amendment. But in the end, it did fail.
Senator Weber, your thoughts on this?
Yes. I think at this point in time, I have a suspicion that had it not had that amendment passed, that the bill possibly would have been pulled from the floor. Also included in the bill is that does allow for Sunday growler sales in our craft breweries, and so that item would have been lost, and so it. It went down as far as the amendment, and then the bill itself was passed. It wasn't unanimous, but it was pretty close to that.
Pretty close.
And so that made for a spirited day.
Any thoughts on the Sunday liquor bill, Representative Anderson?
Well, it hasn't come up in the House yet. We're hearing thoughts that it will be coming up on the House floor at some point in the last month of session. Personally, I hear from my folks back home, I'm kind of in the central part of the state, that the stores themselves don't want to have the Sunday liquor, having that extra day of operational costs. But some folks, of course, you hear from, they would like to have the option to purchase on Sunday. But I guess I'd be leaning to not support the issue if it comes up on the House floor.
Okay, well, I'm a strong supporter of it. I always pride myself on having the wettest voting record compared with the driest lifestyle of any legislator in the House.
No personal gain for you in getting Sunday liquor passed, right?
And the every state around us and the provinces all have Sunday liquor sale. All you have to do to see what it would mean to the state is go, sorry, I don't know what happens in your area, but if you go into the parking lot of the liquor store in Hudson and you look at the license plates of the cars on Sunday, you see why we should have it.
We will, we'll have a chance probably to discuss this. I was visiting a little bit before we went on the air that, well, this is probably over now, and Representative Kahn was reminding me that it's not over until it's over. So we'll see what the rest of the session has to say about that topic. So let's move to the transportation issue that I highlighted earlier. We have a number of viewers who are concerned about this. One viewer in Minneapolis who notes that he's concerned about investment in multimodal transportation and that current funding methods are not sustainable. We have another viewer from Minneapolis who's concerned about long-term funding for transit. A viewer from St. Paul that not quite as enthusiastic about transit, notes that roads and bridges are in terrible disrepair, wants a 10-year dedicated funding plan, and that other viewers who are concerned about the standard for transportation in greater Minnesota, and noting that we're behind behind other cities. There are a wide variety of opinions about what to do here and how to do it. And so I think it's reasonable to have a little discussion about that issue. Let's start with you, Representative Kahn. Talk about transportation. We'll go around the table.
Strong supporter of an increased gas tax. I think we need dedicated funding for transportation. And when you look at the fluctuation of gas prices, people wouldn't even notice if you did it, except if they're told to do it. We've seen the budget in the House. I have not seen the budget in the Senate. It's really a bad deal. It does a lot of shifting. It puts $2 billion on the state's credit card and shifts $3 billion away from areas of the budget that are important for transportation. Transit particularly important.
Well, the Senate bill and the governor's proposal are very close to the same. There's some small differences, but they're pretty much the same proposal. I'm going to support the Senate bill. I think it's important that we move forward on this in this legislative session, and I'd like to see that bill get into a conference committee and actually work something out there so we actually get something done in transportation. I know that this is an issue that costs a lot of money, and in if you look at it in the real world, I don't know if we're going to quite get to where everybody wants to be, but I do think it's important to get started and get moving in that direction. So I will be supporting the Senate Transportation Plan, and we'll see what happens as we move along then.
Well, I think it's safe to say that everyone agrees that we need to do something. Certainly, as you travel the roads in rural Minnesota, we have a lot of roads, a lot of bridges that need a lot of work, and the same is true up in the metro area. I think that we can talk about we need more gas tax, and yet as you look about the fact that we just are coming off of are approaching the end of a fiscal period, and we have a $2 billion surplus, I think the reality of it is exactly how much more money can we take from our citizens. And I think that it is important also to recognize, we talk about dedicated funding, and yet as you talk about a per gallon charge, you look at what's happened over the years as you try to reach greater efficiencies and this type of thing, and you see your volume of gas perhaps go down per vehicle and this type of thing. All of a sudden you're fighting a losing battle because you're always going to be dropping that total volume down. I think to expand the base, having some additional sales tax revenues, quite frankly, makes sense. If we're going to dedicate them all to transportation at that point, and yes, there is some transferring of money, but at the same time, it does become a question of priorities and what you spend where. And right now, transportation needs that attention. So I wouldn't have even had a problem with using some of the surplus, not as a long-term solution, but as a jump start to getting caught up in some of the backlog that we have. But anyway, I do think with the vast agreement that something needs to be done, that we can make some progress. And and am I a big fan of mass transit up here in the metro area? Well, on my way to work this morning at the state office building, I sat and watched the train go by at 7 o'clock, and there was 4 people riding that entire train. So I guess I haven't really seen the burning use of it yet.
I would just add that, and Phyllis, here we go again, but
I'm always right.
it's amazing. I think there's agreement that one of the reasons our economy is doing so well is that nationally the price of gas has come down. So I do think the price of gas does make a difference in the amount of money people have to spend on going out to eat or clothing or whatever. So adding an additional baseline 16 cents a gallon onto the price of gas, I think will make a difference in the recovery rate of our economy. In the Republican plan, yes, it does take from a variety of sources, but it comes up with about $7 billion for transportation without raising the gas tax. And I think that's an important feature that if we can do that, coming off some big tax increases the last couple of years, I think we should try to do it that way for this biennium and see if we have enough people and manpower to get as many projects done as we want, because the job market is very tight and truck drivers in short supply. So can we ramp up to the level we want to with all the money in the world? I'm not quite so sure we can. So let's look at it and do this without raising the gas tax this time around.
Well, the 35W bridge is in my district, so I'm very conscious as to what bad, unimproved bridges and roads are. And the bridge right next to it is the 10th Avenue Bridge is desperately needing bonding for a serious renovation of it. And it's not clear that we're going to get that in the House.
So Senator Kuhn and I would suggest, just asking you, the Senate bill obviously is very different than the House bill, and so what our viewers are wondering what's going to happen. Presumably, the Senate's going to pass a bill close to what the governor would like. The House bill will, of course, be dramatically different, and then it's off to a conference committee. That's the process, right?
That is the process, yes. And then we'll see. The details will get worked out there. At least that's my hope, that we can get to that point. And I feel positive about that. I think we can.
What's the time frame for this kind of activity? We're here now about April 16th. The legislature has to go home, about May 18th or something? May 17th or 18th, something like that?
18th.
May 18th.
So of course that's the drop dead date. We have to have everything done by then. I've looked at the schedule. Some of the bills we're going to look at or be hearing on the House floor next week, and I don't remember seeing transportation on that list. I don't know, Senator Weber, if you, I don't remember seeing that one on there. So I suspect that's a week after yet. But we are starting to take up finance bills next week. Transit was mentioned, and before I give up the floor here, I would like to talk about transit in rural Minnesota, and I think that's something that's pretty important. If you look at rural Minnesota, there's a higher percentage of people in rural Minnesota without driver's license than in the metro area, and so you see the local, those little buses that run around out in rural Minnesota, and I think they're pretty important for service for people who need that. And it's, in a lot of cases, it's seniors. And that's why we have a higher rate of citizens without driver's license.
All right. Well, we will have opportunities to talk about transit, I'm sure, between now and May 18, probably every single week, I would guess. So let's move on to another topic that's a matter of great concern to people in Minnesota, and that's education. We have a viewer from Nisswa who notes that multiple thousands of teachers have left public education before being eligible for retirement. Wants to know whether or not there's any discussion about supporting increased funding for what I would call K-12 public education, and wondering what the results of that are going to be and how do we attract and retain the best teachers. So who wants to take a run at that question to start with?
Well, I serve on the Senate Education Finance Committee, and actually that bill was just passed out of the Finance Committee today. At this point in time, to deal with the issue as far as the monies for the school, and then we start to talk about the formula money at that point, that bill was passed with a 1-and-1.
Meaning 1% in the next fiscal year and 1% in
the following year, yes. Right. And so that, quite frankly, is not enough. I think part of the problem that we're encountering is this issue concerning pre-K and bringing that into the school. And in the Senate bill, it's actually the proposal It started out to be mandatory in our schools. That was removed, and they have the option of going in. It'd be a part-time, a few hours a day. There was somewhat under $70 million allowed in that bill for that. But there was no fiscal note as it relates to how much money are the schools going to have to put into that yet. And there's no, at least I don't believe that amount of money that they're going to provide is in any way, shape, or form going to pay for the costs that the schools are going to have in order to provide the service. So then not only are they not getting enough to continue the services they have, but they're going to have to dip into that money if they indeed wish to provide the program anyway. In many of my schools, they have the issue, they don't have the space. They didn't have the space in some of our schools for all-day kindergarten. And so now you're going to put this on to them besides. But I think the overall thing is that what we have seen happen, and we can talk about the benefits or the disadvantages of all-day K all you want to, but what it has really done, it has taken an enormous amount of money out of education, and we are now not funding the rest of the program the way it needs to be funded. And I talked to my superintendents, and they are not asking for this pre-K. They said it is, we can talk, obviously they have programs out there that deal with those with special needs. It is important to get those kids and to be able to work with them and to help them at an earlier age. And my superintendent said, but beyond that, he said, the students that don't have those special need requirements, he said the studies are basically right. By the time they get to the third grade, you don't really see the benefit of that anymore. And so the reality of it is, we are shortchanging the rest of the education process in order to provide something that in the long term may not necessarily be needed. And in a community like mine, I live in a city of 4,700 people, we currently have 2 preschool programs. I don't quite know what the enrollment of both of them are, but I know there's one that comes from sponsored by a church, the other one in community education. Well, if this pre-K, a 4-year-old program, and they each run 3- and 4-year-old programs. And if this comes into play, basically both of them become an unviable economic unit. Now, one of them may be able to put things together and have enough 3-year-olds in order to keep going. But the reality of it is, if my school was to use this and to put 4-year-old pre-K into the school, my students, my families are going to have fewer preschool options in my community than they do now.
Senator?
Well, when I look at this education funding, this is my idea now. That I'm not talking about the Senate bill, but I believe that we should be paying for what we have now first and keep up with inflation. And now back to the subject for early childhood education. I think there are some advantages to that, but it's important, I think, to remember that local school districts were starting with all-day, everyday kindergarten before the before the state ever said they should. And now, even with the 3- and 4-year-olds, there's some school districts going ahead with that, even without the state saying they have to do it. And so what I'm trying to say is I think that local school districts recognize if there is a need and they can fill it. And so I'm a little nervous about the idea of saying you have to do 4-year-old pre-K now, or 4-year-olds early education now. Again, I think that, in my opinion, for this year at least, I would like to see the money that's available all go on the formula and fund the schools for the next biennium in that way.
Well, and you make a good point, Senator. Actually, what we have heard that in the Senate plan right now, even with the 1-in-1, actually, with that funding, the second largest school district in the state of Minnesota is going to have to lay off over 200 teachers if this plan goes forward. And my caucus members on the Education Committee actually came out with a proposal some weeks ago to put 3 and 3 in the formula and make a pledge that there would be no new mandates on our school districts for these next 2 years, and allow them to utilize the money that they receive. If they feel they need to have the pre-K, they have the right to do it. But otherwise, you're right. We are not taking care of what we currently have, and until we do, we shouldn't be forcing new programs out there.
Representative Khan, your thoughts?
Well, it's a subject I have personally a lot of opinions on it. Legislatively, I've never really been involved in it. There's a lot of evidence, good economic evidence, that the earlier you get to prepare children, that the better that they'll do later. And so for some of these things which sound really good to talk about, I think we also want to look at from an economic point of view also. If we have less trouble with children in their later years of school because they've been well prepared in the earlier years, we may save money in the long run.
I would just add that I agree with what has been said tonight, but I think what we need to do to do the best job of using our dollars efficiently is to target the kids that really need these early programs. And the House Education Plan has a big increase in scholarships through a parent-aware program that I hope gets more advanced outstate as well as here in the metro area. But I've seen studies that show about half of our kids are ready for kindergarten when they're 4 or 5 years old. So let's look at the kids that could really use the additional help and to get those kids ready. The other thing I would mention is that I think the way the governor's program has come out, it's not a mandatory type program, but what happens is they're going to take money out of a school readiness program, which goes to schools already. And if you don't do the pre-kindergarten 4-year-old program, you would lose that readiness money. So they're kind of forcing schools, I think, to go along with the pre-K program. And I agree that we're just stretching ourselves too thin and are not allowing enough funding for the basic nuts and bolts of running our education system in that basic formula.
And getting back to part of the question, too, the teachers leaving the field, we're not paying teachers well enough, and we're not doing enough to keep really good teachers.
And I think we're asking our schools and teachers to do so many more things today than when I was a youngster. And
that was a couple of years ago?
A couple, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But, society is changing, and we have preschool programs and breakfasts and lunches and after-school programs. It didn't used to be that way. And teaching today is a tough job, and our schools have a lot to do. Their plates are full, and they do a good job with what they have available.
We have a remarkably well-informed audience here, and we have a question that we have not had this legislative session. It's a question from a viewer in Nicollet who wants to know whether or not the legislature has a role in addressing the use of antibiotics in livestock. We have some people here experienced in agriculture who can maybe address that issue. Should I look to you first, Senator Coonan? Maybe you could talk a little bit about that issue. It's been in the news some because, for example, I think McDonald's has made an announcement about moving away from antibiotics in chickens. But it's a complicated topic, and I'm picking on you, Senator Coonan, to maybe educate our viewers a little bit about that.
Well, first of all, let me start by saying I'm not an expert in this area, but I will make a few comments. There are some companies that are saying they're not going to use food products that have been raised with antibiotics, and that's a volunteer choice. They have, of course, have to track all of that and be able to show that, be able to have a track record that goes backwards to show where if it's chickens or whatever it was raised, and be able to prove that that's the case. But there is some of that going on voluntarily. Now, as far as the regulation on how antibiotic is used, of course, there's the labeling, which has to be followed, and I believe that's more of a federal issue. I just haven't seen much of that in the Ag Committee here. So I think that's more of a federal issue, and so I guess at this point, that's all I'm going to be able to say about that.
Representative Anderson?
No, I agree that this is a federal issue with the FDA, the drugs, and I think what the listener is talking about are these low-level antibiotics that are routinely put into animal feeds. And
I'll point out I've had a bill to stop that several times,
but
with no success.
Yeah, I think there's trade-offs, that there's advantages, obviously, to doing it that way as far as faster weight gains, things like that, and cheaper rates of gain. So I think this is a consumer preference issue, that if they want to pay for the organic type products, that's the consumer's choice. But I think there will be a cost difference, a higher cost, if we move to an antibiotic-free supply such as that.
The high cost that we're paying right now is the development of antibiotic resistance, and the fact that antibiotics that used to routinely work in humans don't work because of the development of resistant strains. And it's very good evidence about why that's related to the excess use of antibiotics in agriculture. And there's no one wants to stop it for the treatment of a sick animal. It's a question of the routine using it as a food ingredient that's a problem. And I'm not a farmer, but I claim expertise in this because my graduate work was all done using antibiotic-resistant bacteria. So.
Interesting.
Well, I think, the reality of it is that some people want to stop that here in Minnesota, and yet it is extremely difficult to try and do this simply on a state basis. The regulation has been on a national basis, and I think the discussion has to continue to be on a national basis. You cannot make the state of Minnesota an outlier and an island unto itself here with that type of legislation and just create serious problems for the livestock industry in the state in so doing. And I think there certainly is more that is needed in terms of some of the research and development as it relates to the issue.
We have a viewer from Benson who wants to talk about whether or not there's been any movement in the legislature about property tax relief for farmers insofar as building schools is concerned. This is a topic we had some discussion at early in the session. We haven't revisited in the last month or so. Who'd like to address that?
I can take that one on. I serve on the Property Tax Division in the House, and the bill we're just working through, and hopefully we'll pass it tomorrow, does contain a provision where on a capital building project for a school or referendum, what the bill does, there was talk about going to a house, garage, 1 acre, but we've backed off of that, and now there's going to be a 50% credit on what the tax would have been on all of the agricultural land. So it's going to be a 50% credit paid by the state, so it won't be a shift to anybody's house or business. So on the house side, I think that's a good measure. It's fairly expensive. It's going to cost about $47 million a year to backfill some of these bond issues, and it's also going to address the capital levies already in place and not just the new ones. So I think that's the fair way to do it. So there will be some relief for farmers on the school bond referendums.
And we heard that bill in the Senate yesterday in the Tax Committee, and I'm actually authoring that bill in the Senate. And it's I think it's a good way to go. Representative Anderson mentioned the house, garage, and 1 acre. I also authored that bill, but that bill has been introduced and authored by various legislators over the last 7-8 years, and it can never get the political support because it shifts.
It's a huge shift.
Yeah, so onto homeowners and even businesses. If you did that house, garage, 1 acre, which uses referendum market value, that takes all the responsibility of the levy for capital projects off the farmland except house, garage, 1 acre, and it reduces the CI rate from 2 to 1 for that levy. But even with that reduction in CI rate, they see an increase in taxes in some of these districts because there's so much farmland that with that shift, even at a rate of 1 instead of 2, even some businesses see increases. So this bill that Representative Anderson is talking about, the one that we heard in the Senate yesterday, is a much better way to do it. And also, as Representative Anderson mentioned, it includes all of the capital levy for building projects, not just from this point going forward. And that's an important part of this too.
Representative Khan, any thoughts on this?
I really believe in a progressive tax system, and so I do believe that people ought to be taxed according to their ability to pay. And I know that there are poor farmers, but I also know that there are very rich farmers. And so I would like to, again, see tax breaks go to those who really need them.
Well, I would like to say that I agree with Representative Anderson and Senator Coonan on this issue.
It stops right there, though, I guess.
No, I think, as they have already said, the original house, garage, 1 acre was not a valid plan because of the shift, and we would have never seen a bonding issue passed again in any of our rural districts because of the kind of shift that would have occurred from that. And I think the plan that is out there is reasonable. And it offers a good alternative. Also, within the Senate Finance Bill, there is getting away from the bonding for construction purposes, we did do some facilities funding that will also help our schools, because many of our rural schools have a substantial amount of deferred maintenance out there, and actually a number of large metro schools do it in that respect. And so, but this does provide some relief and some ability for the schools to get caught up in some of that as well.
I have to add a comment. Talking about, in all seriousness, farming and the way farming's economy has changed the last couple of years. We did have some really good years when commodity prices were high, but input costs also came up along with it. And now with commodity prices for corn, soybeans, and such down to about half of what they were, input costs have not come down yet. So I don't know of a farmer this year that can show a positive cash flow. The expenses are just too high for what you can hopefully make in the fall selling corn for $3 a bushel. So that's the reason this bill we're talking about is so important, that if a farmer is going to be looking at property taxes of $40, $50, $60 an acre, it just makes that cash flow that much more negative. It makes it more difficult to show a profit.
I'll have to put my favorite agricultural issue on the table, and that's the legalization of industrial hemp, which I think we may get to do this year.
In fact, now that you've introduced that, Representative Kahn, let's touch on that, because we've actually had a couple of questions on that earlier in the year.
Okay.
There is some movement to passing that this year?
Oh, we think so. It's really done well in the Senate. In the House, it's had some problems in committees, but we're working on a floor
It passed
amendment.
the Ag Committee.
Yes, it passed the Ag Committee, and it passed Ag Finance. It gets, the COP guys kind of hold it up a little bit, but they're not as adamant against it as they've been in the past. So we're very
Interesting.
optimistic.
Very interesting. Well, we'll be watching that with some,
Kentucky is 2 years ahead of us, and the person who pushed it in Kentucky was Mitch McConnell, who's pushed it federally and also put pressure on the Kentucky legislature. So we've got to catch up.
What do you use industrial hemp for?
Oh, everything. Beer, seeds, washcloths, ties, shirts, and concrete. There's a whole, hempcrete actually. There's a whole set of a company that really wants to work on construction projects.
This program is educational. There's no doubt about it. All right, well, let's move on. A viewer from Belgrade wants to know, can someone explain why getting rid of Minnesota Care helps Minnesotans? A viewer from Evansville wants to talk about the MNsure open enrollment and 24/7 processes. We had another viewer who also somewhat skeptical about MNsure. What's going on with MNsure? What's happening? What's the legislature going to do about that? Who wants to take a run at that question?
Well, I'll take a run at the easiest part of it.
Okay, all right.
Which wasn't in the question. Some of the problems that we've had with MNsure has been with the technological services attached to it, and one of the worst thing that was done in the original bill was exempt MNsure from the control of the state information systems management. And we have a bill which is, it's part of one of the bills that's moving through that puts that back in. And I think had we had the best technological expertise working on it instead of them excluding from it, it might not have solved all the problems, but it probably wouldn't have created as many as we had. So that's the easy
The easy piece of that. MNsure generally, what's happening this session about it? Senator Webb?
Well, I don't serve on any of the Health and Human Services committees, but and I know that their bills right now in the Senate are being worked up and that type of thing. The reality of it is that the concept was not well thought out. It was not handled appropriately, and I think that what happened was in the entire MNsure board, as that was put together, it actually failed to, not only in technology, but it failed to bring the people to the table that really know the industry in and out. And they really tried to keep people away from it that were involved, heavily involved in the industry, and that just doesn't work. You also saw in the case of the companies, you saw that the Department of Commerce placed an inordinate amount of pressure on a company to reduce their rates to the point where, quite frankly, that company now went abandon trying to sell the insurance. And somewhere along the line, you have to take the politics out of it and let things work as best you can in a good business model. And unfortunately, the state did not promote a good business model, and quite frankly, the Department of Commerce has to shoulder a good share of that responsibility, and there need to be some serious corrections made in that regard.
Well, we've got hundreds of plus thousands of people that are getting care who used to not get care. We've got kids covered under their parents' policy to a much greater age. There are,
but Representative,
all the people
I also
who've complained about it aren't.
I also want to tell you that I've had plenty
much.
of calls from people who, quite frankly, have went from the ranks of the insured to the uninsured because they cannot afford the new premiums that are out there. And I had an individual, and one part of that question dealt with Minnesota Care. And I had a phone call from a younger middle-aged farmer who had some health issues earlier in life, and he couldn't get regular health insurance, so he was insured through MinCare. And then his wife and 3 children were in the regular health insurance policy. And basically, under the new plan, their premiums went from a total combined premium of $800 and some a month to well over $1,600 a month. And he said, I'm just going to not do it. And I'm just not going to have it, and I'll just let the chips fall where they may if something develops. And so this program, if you're at the lower end of the income stream, nobody went without care, because that is the responsibility that hospitals have when people come in the door to provide that care.
That's the most expensive and least effective way of giving care.
It might very well be, but you also, in my opinion, at this point in time, MNsure is still a failure in many respects.
Any other comments on that? We do have a follow-up question from a viewer, and I mangled this earlier, so I should at least give this viewer a little better statement on their question. This viewer says that she called to sign up with MNsure, discovered she's on medical assistance. Now she's concerned that when people who die after the age of 55 are on medical assistance, there's a lien placed on the deceased's estate, and she wants to know if there's been any discussion about changing that at the legislature.
Not that I'm aware of.
I don't know that.
I think currently there's a look-back period of 5 years, I believe.
There's an article in the Wall Street Journal about this past week. I think it's an issue that's percolating even more than Minnesota. I think it's true elsewhere as well.
That's true, yeah.
Well, we certainly want to take care of the people that need it in Minnesota, the young, the old, and some of these insurance health systems are expensive, and Minnesota needs to find a way to take care of our people and do it in the most efficient way possible. And moving some of these to private plans may be a better way if we can give them as good a product. But I agree, some of the things that have happened have been good, with kids staying on policies longer. You can get insured for the conditions that they can't deny coverage. So there have been some good things, but this whole area is the by far fastest increasing cost to government, and we somehow need to get a handle on that while at the same time taking care of those that need it.
We're on the health and human services issues. Let's go down that road a little further. A viewer from Willmar indicated that years ago the state started closing regional treatment centers, and now it's going after closing group homes. Is the state getting out of the mental health care business? Mental health care, anybody want to talk about that? Anybody know anything about the status of the session?
Well, in Willmar's especially sensitive because there's the polls out there now to close the CABS program. That's for the adolescents, and those that really need a pretty serious care. It's actually a hospital setting. And the concern is that we don't leave a gap in coverage there. And we've got the proposal backed off for another 6 months now to give more time to work on it. They want to replace the CABS program, and I always forget these acronyms, but it's the next level of treatment that isn't quite a hospital setting. And the CABS program, they want to relocate that, partly because the building in Willmar isn't set up structurally correct for that type of treatment, so they want to move that, I believe, closer to the metro area, but then replace in Willmar and around the state a program that's not quite that level of care and where there's actually more demand, and increase the services in that area. And I think that's actually a good plan, just so we don't leave a gap there of coverage while they're making the transition, and that's my biggest concern. For Willmar and Kennewick County itself, of course, there's a concern, too, about the people who have jobs there. And, of course, we're worried about their jobs and their families. But it's a bigger issue than that. We have this workforce with this pool that has this training and these skills in this area, and we don't want to lose them, have them leave the area. And that's another reason why we'd want to make sure that there's something to replace any of these closures before they actually happen.
Any thoughts on this from anyone else?
Well, the Republican, I hate to pick on them, but the Republican budget in the House is cutting more than $1.1 billion from the Health and Human Services budget. And that's cuts of the ones that affect the most vulnerable Minnesotans. And
That can be looked at a couple of different ways, Representative, and I agree that the mental health area is one area that our schools are needing more people in the field. It's an area that we don't have enough people, psychologists, psychiatrists, to work and help people, but I agree that it's an area that
and the
that
worst
needs more
thing we
attention.
do is turn our jails into mental health systems. Number of people in jail who are really suffering from a mental health issue is very serious.
And that's another issue that's being talked about around the state and in Willmar, which I'm familiar with, of course, is that the law enforcement and the court system is getting too many people in the judicial system that really need treatment, and so we need to work on that, I think, too. What happens is that they get a patient will do something that's kind of out of control of the staff that's there, and so then they call law enforcement for help, and law enforcement doesn't know what to do with them, and if they damage some property, then of course they bring them in and there's file a charge. And,
Right, and so then now they're in the criminal justice system.
Exactly. Instead of getting treatment is what they really need. So that's an area that we really need to work on.
But spending in the House plan is going to go up by $400 million. Again, you can look at it a couple of different ways, but in actual spending, it will be going up under our plan.
Well, I think some of the other issues that are out there too, and I think this issue as it relates to the justice system and mental health system, where do they go and where do they wind up, is a real problem. But we're also seeing things like some of our treatment centers, and I know we have one in my district for alcohol and drug treatment, and quite frankly. The payment structure, there's been an allowance that the insurance is paying less, and they're getting a couple $100,000 a year less, and that's about what they're losing a year, and so there is a very real risk of some of these services disappearing.
A viewer from Leonard wants to talk about buffer strips. What's happening with that issue? I think we've explained it adequately to our viewers what it's all about, and the people who are calling in about it certainly understand it. So let's talk a little bit about buffer strips. I don't know if we started with you. Let's start with you, Representative Anderson.
Buffers are the topic that just doesn't go away. And the governor, of course, came out with his plan and tried to do a simpler plan, one size fits all. And there was a lot of pushback on it from ag interests and such that not the argument that we don't need cleaner water. We all agree we do. But was that the best way to do it, to mandate 50 feet along every protected waterway in the state? And what we'd like to see done is work more on the local level, more funding to our SWCDs to work on specific areas that really would benefit from.
That's Soil and Water Conservation Districts.
Yes. Soil and water districts.
Yeah, those of you who live in downtown Minneapolis, you live in a condo, that's a Soil and Water Conservation District.
Where the funding would go to them to help farmers work on the areas that need it, to target buffer strips or any other types of conservation practices. I saw a term the other night of precision conservation, and I like that there are more things to do besides just buffers. And I guess the governor's plan has kind of opened up things a bit, but where that's going to go before the end of the session, I'm not quite sure. He may insist on something, and we may get some kind of a buffer initiative.
I'm a strong supporter of it. I think it's something that farmers used to do until this idea of plowing to the edge of the property came forward. One of the things we're also trying to tell people is, hey, that industrial hemp will go just fine on buffer strips. We just have to take out the word perennial.
Well, the one committee that the bill got a hearing in the Senate, I serve on that, it'd be in Environment and Energy, and so I had about a 20-25 minute bonding experience with the commissioners of Ag and the DNR that night. And I guess in my business as a real estate appraiser, I have dealt with appraising for drainage issues and this type of thing, ditch viewing and what have you. I've supported viewers' reports. I've been appraised for property owners that were battling viewers' reports, and I've served as a ditch viewer. There are a number of issues that are involved in this and that's the problem. This problem is much more complicated than a simple 50-foot strip of land. And we have ways to deal with this through, as Representative Anderson says, with the local soil and water conservation districts, ensuring that they're properly funded. Because the reality of it is that if you wait until that final 50 feet to worry about water control, you've lost the battle. Because if you're in an area with soil erosion coming off the hill, you need to stop that up on the hill rather than trying to stop it before it goes into the creek. Now, there are going to be some areas where buffers are necessary. I also have areas of rivers where there's a nice 50-foot buffer strip. Well, there was a 50-foot buffer strip because now 10 foot of it has washed away into the river. You see, so that does not stop the problem all by itself. And so what we need to do is, and also this also applied to drainage ditches. The reality of it is, I only have 3 townships in Redwood County, but they have over 5,100 miles of drainage ditch, or excuse me, 521 miles of county and judicial ditches in that county. And if you take that 50 foot, you were looking at over 6,300 acres. And the reality of it is you cannot come in and just tell people you will do this with your land. If you can qualify it for a program, you'll get some money. If you don't, tough. You're tromping on people's individual property rights. Also, as you deal with these programs and they have drainage tiles going through them, you have to be able to allow access. Some of those programs do not allow you to get in there and dig up a tile for repair and this type of thing. So there are a number of logistical issues that were not well thought out and that needed to be. And I encouraged the governor when he was in Worthington a couple of weeks ago on the buffer strip. I encouraged him to pull his proposals off the table and bring to the table the people that actually are going to be required to make this work. That being the farm groups, that being the soil and water conservation folks. We have nobody disagrees with the goal, but the way that it's being proposed to get there, there will be a lot of disappointment at the end of the day if that's what we go forward with.
And that's right. I've never heard any farm organization or commodity group, for that matter, say they don't want buffer strips. They all understand they're beneficial. The problem is, which has been the point's been made already, is that 50 feet fits. That's not necessarily one size fits all. I think also the timelines aren't long enough to get that done, and I don't know where all that money's coming from. So those are some issues, and also another issue that I see with that is that DNR enforcement. That's another real problem. And so when I talk to the SWCDs, they always say the thing that holds them up when they look at all the applications of people who voluntarily want to put buffer strips in, the thing that holds it up is the funding. They'll be run out of money before all the applications are taken care of. And so I think, that's an area we need to look at is and the SWCDs do a really nice job of this. They work in partnership with farmers and landowners, and I think that's the right approach.
If I could add one thing, I think one positive thing the entire governor's plan has done is raised awareness of the problem. And as the senator mentioned, if increased funding locally can encourage more projects to be done, then I think it could be a positive thing to get more done in what I would hope to be a voluntary fashion.
Last question on Health and Human Services. A viewer from Duluth wants to know what the legislature is going to do this session about long-term care issues. Anybody want to speak to that?
Again, I think one of the things we need increased payment for long-term care workers, and I hope that we'll see some of that. Again, I don't know. Looking at the Republican budget in the House, it's not there, even though a lot of people did put in bills calling for it. So I'm hoping before the end of the session that we'll look. What if talking about a minimum of a 5% increase or something like that?
Well, there's a bit more than that, and it is in the Republican budget plan. And the figure that I've seen most recently is $168 million to put in a new way of paying for care for nursing homes, where we'd actually pay for the cost of care. and that's one thing that I'm pretty confident will get done in our bill this year. It's been a high priority of rural senators and representatives to increase funding for nursing homes, to attract more workers with better pay and incentives like that. So I'm very confident we will get really a new way to pay for care in nursing homes out of this session.
Well, I hope so. I don't think it's in the budget now, and the amounts being cut out of the Health and Human Services budget don't leave a lot of hope of putting that money back in.
It's there.
Well, and I just want to say, I've become very much aware of the nursing home issues. Obviously, I was sworn into office January 8th, 2013, and my mother went into the Mary Jane Brown home in Laverne on January 7th, 2013. So, I commend the workers in our nursing homes that they do a marvelous job. And there is a lot of dedication there that they demonstrate. Right now, I believe Representative Anderson is right. There's a proposal out there to take care of a part of this funding problem that we have in paying for this, because in our rural nursing homes, because of the deep rural status, and that's the thing we always have to remember, all these medical things, depending on where you live, depends upon how much you get reimbursed. And our homes are looking at a $34 bed a day loss right now, and you just can't keep that going. That's not a very good business model. And so we do need to get that issue taken care of.
Long-term care, about 15 seconds.
Well, in the Senate, we've got the reforms for the nursing homes, with I believe it's about $168 million, and that gets rid of the lowest reimbursement, which is deep rural. And then there's also 5% for the biennium on wayward services also.
I want to thank our panel this evening for a great conversation. Thank you, the viewers, for participating. If Emily from St. Paul and our viewer from Starbuck who had questions we didn't get to, my apologies. Maybe next week. In any event, we will be with you next week and all the weeks that follow with your legislators. Thank you and good night.
There's much more about Your Legislators online at pioneer.org/yourlegislators. Find out more about the history of the program, who's been a guest, and watch all of our past episodes. There's also a photo gallery, informative links, and much more. You can also get involved and stay in touch by following us on Twitter and join us in the discussion on our Facebook page. Thank you for watching Your Legislators. Major funding for Your Legislators is provided by Move Minnesota, a statewide coalition fighting for a 10-year commitment to fixing our dire transportation needs. A safe, reliable transportation system strengthens Minnesota's economy. Join the conversation at movemn.org. Additional funding provided by Flaherty and Hood has provided quality legal and legislative services to clients in Greater Minnesota for more than 20 years. Our legal team focuses on municipal employment and environmental law, while our lobbyists energetically represent clients at the state capitol. Online at flaherty-hood.com. MAPE members, making Minnesota clean waters, safe communities, quality education, and veterans care happen. We work hard for Minnesotans.